collective management organizations and digital tracking systems to improve their artists' payment. Now, can Uganda actually pick up the mantle and run with it to replicate this success? And is the sector ready? Now, to help us unpack this, I'm being joined by Ronnie Nsubuga. He is a fashion entrepreneur and a creatives business owner representing fashion, representing fashion creatives, and of course, navigating the intellectual property challenges. I am Naroga, he's Nsubuga, so it's a very interesting table of Mamba this morning.
I know.
How are you?
I feel I'm home, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel I'm home. When I'm talking to you, I feel like I'm talking to my sister. Yes.
How are you?
I'm fine. We're good.
The law came out. What was the initial feeling that you had?
Personally, I was very excited and happy, but at the same time disappointed with the legal committee. But it didn't hear me out when we faced it with our proposals to include quite certain clauses within the bill.
Yeah.
However, we were later told by URSB that everything has been put in there, because I think the time has now come where fashion and other kind of sectors are now a part of the creative industry. So we are proud to be seeing the bill coming to rise right now, and we feel we're going to make more money in this. So I felt good, I would say. I was part of the celebrations.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. We are also having Andrew Kagwa, who's an arts journalist with Daily Monitor, and also he will be joining us on Zoom, bringing policy analysis and regional comparisons. But coming back to studio here, as I pick up the conversation with Ronnie here, let's just have an explainer of the law. The Copyright and Neighboring Rights Amendment Bill introduces several key changes. It is strengthening protection of creatives' works across all arts forms. It's introducing digital tracking systems for use of music and content in public spaces. It's enhancing royalty collection mechanisms through collective management organizations. It is emphasizing copyright registration for creators. It is introducing stiffer penalties, fines up to 50 million Ugandan shillings or imprisonment of up to 10 years for infringement. It is expanding protection to digital content and online distribution. And also, it is clarifying ownership rights between a creator, a producer, and a distributor. It's also encouraging fair compensation for artists across platforms. So this is where things stand right now. Now, a breakdown of this law, from the things that I've talked about and what you have been planning, and you said you had wanted to share with the legal committee before they really passed this bill and put it before Parliament. Are there some things that are left out?
You see, areas such as fashion and most of the creative industry, most people think it is all about music. And if you realize that music people or people who are musicians, they make the loudest noise. So most of this law was put out looking at them, but not some of us, especially those that are in the fashion industry. When you talk about royalties, when you talk about the collecting societies, now like us who are in the fashion industry, we don't even have any kind of company that can collect royalties or something like that. And at the same time, you realize that Uganda as a government has not come out to put out awareness about such kind of things. Copyright is extremely so new to the fashion industry, and here you go saying that the bill is for everybody, you know. So there is quite a lot that has to be done, but by the time we start benefiting out of this law fully, I am sure we'll be somewhere. But for the start, I believe it is good for the start, because if it wasn't the bill now coming out, I don't think a lot of artists in the fashion industry are going to benefit, you know. So I think let us give it a rise and see. You never know, we're going to benefit out of it. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Andrew Kagwa is joining us on Zoom. And Andrew, good morning to you.
Good morning, Priscilla.
All right. We want to first get your initial reactions when Parliament did pass this bill.
Truth is, this was a very, very big moment. I thought it would be a very big moment for all creatives, but unfortunately, it seems it was hijacked by the musicians. And yet, if you ask me, I feel like music has been one of the most compensated art forms in this country. Basically, if it's collecting royalties and even if it's getting support from the government, music has been one of the most supported. So I was a bit perplexed by the fact that the musicians or artists seem to hijack the bill and take it for themselves, almost ignoring all the other sectors like visual artists, filmmakers, fashion designers, and all the people that create in the industry. So for me, it was a good moment, but it was a bit sad that it was hijacked by one section of the whole art discipline.
What exactly do you see will have an impact in terms of change from this law? Should it be ascended to by the president? And what do you think was not well thought about? Of course, here you've mentioned that other sectors in the arts and creatives have been really significantly left out. On that note, does that mean that now the fashion industry or sector will also have to fight and come up with its own bill in order to be recognized by government for its input and contribution?
No, I do not believe the fashion sector has to fight for their own bill. But what I think is right now we need to do a lot of sensitizing. And the sensitizing doesn't even just have to happen with the public. It has to happen with the creatives and it has to happen with the artists as well. By the artists this time, I'm talking about the musicians. When the musicians were fighting for this bill, it feels like they thought the only thing that can be abused or exploited is the music. And yet, when you think about it, there are many things that are exploited. Even artists themselves, the musicians, do exploit other people's IP. They exploit a lot of fashion IP. They exploit a lot of graphics IP. So there is need to sensitize both the public and the artists when it comes to what can actually be abused. I believe right now it's upon the fashion industry to sensitize people that in this bill they were also included. Because when they were talking, when you read the bill is not explicit on which art form they are talking about. They are talking about creatives and they are talking about intellectual property. And in this case, I believe the intellectual property is what has been created. So it's upon the fashion designers, it's upon the writers, it's upon the choreographers to feed themselves in these words through sensitization.
Coming back to you, Ronnie, and I believe you have something to respond to what he has said. Amidst everything else, some of the phrasings in here, in as much as the artists, the musicians, quote unquote, are the ones that were at the forefront of this bill, but the phrasing, the legal framework around it is intended to accommodate anyone who feels that they can't fit it within the bracket that's being referred to.
Definitely. I would say it's intended to accommodate all of us. At the moment, since last year, we've been working closely with the Uganda Registration Service Bureau, with my association, the Pearl of Africa Fashion Alliance, as a collective body that represents people that work in the fashion industry. We feel the time has come where artists that work within the sector, from photographers, models, stylists, designers, now can understand what fashion, what intellectual property is and what the value attached to it. For a very long time, most Ugandans did not understand what intellectual property was and even the value attached to it. And I would say that the government also didn't do quite enough to bring this forth to them. A lot of registrations have been done here and there. You register a company and that's it. But at the end of the day, you find that our artists are not benefiting that much. Mm-hmm. People are broke because of lack of structures. Now, at the end of the day, without such kind of avenues, you'll find that Ugandans are not going to benefit that much from what they're doing. If I'm a fashion photographer, I take very amazing pictures, and you'll find that these pictures, the client will take them away. Then the next day, you'll find them on a billboard. I want to benefit out of that picture. You know, many times we work with hotels, we work with quite a lot of clients, and you'll find that they're using your work, you know, for a good time. I remember some time back, I did a campaign that put out a billboard for some client, a cosmetics brand, and we were paid only 500,000 by then. But even up to date, I find the same brand still using these kind of images. Why? Because there was lack of copyright. There was lack of intellectual property. So I think awareness has to be done so much. But we are involved. We are a part of this sector. We are a part of whatever is going on. And I think the time has now come that artists are now getting involved. People in the fashion industry are now getting to realize that they're part of intellectual property.
Okay. Let me return to Andrew. We want to talk about the feasibility in Uganda's context. Andrew, you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so this law is proposing digital tracking, it's proposing stronger licensing and also structured royalty distribution. Considering Uganda's informal creative sector that has actually grown more, is implementation a realistic goal for Uganda, and do we have the infrastructure to enforce it effectively?
First of all, one of the things I would love to say is royalties were never meant to make people rich. It's a very unfortunate truth about the copyright law and how it's been framed around the world. They were never meant to make people rich, but they were meant to make people pay to use art, because it's very symbolistic when people are paying to use your art. That means a hotel that will want to pay you more will know that your art is not for free. When someone wants to work with you, they will know that your art is not for free, because there are royalties which are very symbolistic. Now, coming back on whether we have the framework or everything that it takes to actually pull this off, I would say that we were a bit very ambitious. When I was reading the bill, they used, because, I know the law rarely wants to make mistakes when they are phrasing. The law is usually very deliberate, how they write and how they phrase their words. I read something like every time something is used. And much as every time makes sense when it comes to a film, that a creative must be paid every time a film is played, it doesn't make a lot of sense when it comes to music, because the same song can be played 100 times by probably the same radio station in a day. Yet the same film can be played 100 times by the same TV a day, because a film takes over 90 minutes. That, it doesn't even make sense to play the same film thrice a day by the same TV. So it makes a lot of sense when you're talking about film and you're like, every time it plays. And it's the same thing with photography. If you're to say every time, it will be very, very hard to explain what every time means. When I put up a billboard with a picture, so what is every time in that? Every time someone looks at it, every day it stays up. So when it comes to the phrasing, things like every time kind of mean, for music, they kind of mean per play, and paying per play when it comes to radio is not radio or TV is not very, very feasible. If a radio or TV has to pay every time they play a song, as artists, you kind of feel like you're kind of pricing yourself out of the market. And then when it comes to film, that might make sense, but then the law wasn't very specific on which creatives they were talking about when they were talking. They simply said every time an intellectual property is used. So some things are not feasible for some art forms, and yet they are very feasible for other art forms. So I feel like it will be a challenge. But then when you look at the way the entertainment sector looks in Uganda, how are you going to track how bars are playing? Are you going to give each bar a tracker? Some bars do not even have electricity. Some of them do not have internet. So like much of it is not very, very clear. And again, they've not even talked about the money. Like how much money are you expecting bars to pay for every content they're using, be it film, be it music, be it literature? How do you expect them to pay? Again, you might end up in a situation where you're pricing yourself out of the market. You might think probably 5 million is okay for Radio X, but it's not very okay for Radio Y because they do not make as much. You might think that an advertising company Y can probably pay this amount of money to keep the billboards up with these images, but there is another advertising company that cannot pay as much. So there are a lot of things that I feel like were not really communicated with the bill, so which makes it so hard to know if most of the things they propose, good as they sound, will be feasible and will not end up pricing them out of the market. I mean, at the moment, I felt like the law had to really look at copyright, and that's when, I mean, it had to look at AI, and that's when we look at fashion, because in countries that are developed, they're talking about AI very, very much. And when we talk about fashion at the moment, I pass around Kampala and I'm seeing very many billboards with AI people that are advertising products that we're using in Uganda. And I feel like these are things that had to be addressed. Those are taking away jobs from ordinary Ugandans that woke up and became models and would be on those billboards. If someone can just wake up and prompt an AI to create something of a weird human taking a product, that's a job lost by a human who would be a graphic designer, a human who would have been a model. So I feel like there are many things that were not addressed, but then there were also many things that if they do not address them well, they could be pricing themselves out of the market.
Allow me to just dig deep into what you have shared with us. One of the things that you have talked about is the element of every time, which is not clearly defined through the legal framing of the bill. But we want to find out, you have made reference to local content. Does this apply to non-local content? If it's content from Kenya, if it's content from Nigeria, if it's content from Europe, does this bill hold water?
Uganda is a member of the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, and naturally it should. However, the way we've been working, because we've always been members of WIPO and we've always been collecting royalties for other societies, like the society from Nigeria, the society from probably England, the US, we've been collecting for them. It has been working like you pay a blanket fee, which blanket fee allows you to use intellectual property. That's for TV, it would allow you to use as much music as you can. When it comes to film and when it comes to TV series, the licensing is different. But when you use this intellectual property, in this case music, they remit money to those people, to those societies, because we are members. And if they are using our intellectual property in their countries, they would also remit. Though in the framing of that law, it wasn't every. It was the moment you paid that license and you can use, you could use as much. At the moment where we have every, because for me, the part of every disturbed me a lot when I was reading the bill. The part of every seems to turn up in the Ugandan bill, and I do not know any other country where it appears. Because for me, the way I understand the part of every is almost pay per play, or the same way you would pay per view. So for me, every is very concerning because I do not see it in other parts. And the way we've seen how Uganda operates in a way that people believe they need to protect their own intellectual property, but they do not need to protect the intellectual property of other people. So people have been protecting their intellectual property, and they never care when a company wakes up, puts up pirated movies, and creates a website, and they ask people to pay for those pirated movies.
Thank you, Andrew.
Never cared about that.
Andrew?
Yes? Yes.
Just so we conclude on this part of Every Time before I come back to Ronnie, I want to find out, because what you've shared puts the middleman in a quagmire space. The middleman here being NTV, The Beat, being KFM, and all our subsidiaries. And so if we have to make these payments every day, we are seeing a scenario where we are rather being pushed in a position to play more foreign content, to use more foreign content and promote foreign content, which now does not add up to the government initiative of promoting local content.
Yes, that's actually where I was going, that at the moment, the way the bill reads, it kind of pushes people to play more foreign content, because very many people are very much aware that with foreign content, there'll be very little follow-up, or there'll be very few people that will come to your door that you've played this music, pay for it. And it's also a danger. It's also a danger of what I talked about earlier, almost pricing yourself out of the business.
So how much is a radio station expected to pay? And is that fee the same as for a TV station that has audio and video?
It's one of those things they've not yet talked about. They've not talked about the pricing. And like I said, it's one of those key things they need to be very, very careful about, because we've seen our friends in Kenya. Like I had a conversation with Nameless, and he was telling me about a day their artist organization came up and went up against DJs. He said that when they went up against DJs, most of the DJs they were looking at were the city-based DJs who are making a lot of money. So they argued that DJs were making a lot of money, so they should pay, and they put up a fee. What they didn't think about at that time was that the majority of the DJs that play strictly Kenyan music were DJs that were not getting a lot of money. They were DJs in the outskirts, were DJs who are trying to survive. So when they put their law in place, the DJs in the outskirts that were mostly surviving on Kenyan music and were mostly surviving on DJs, on being a DJ, not endorsements, stopped playing Kenyan music and started playing Tanzanian music. And remember, Tanzanian music is also in Kiswahili, so you're not even struggling to bring it in. So when they started playing Tanzanian music, you had an influx of Tanzanian music on the Kenyan scene. And he told me that much as they reversed that, to date they are still struggling with an influx of Tanzanian music. And they reversed that very, very many years ago. But the damage was already done. So we might end up in that situation where, because
Andrew?
Things are not very clear,
Andrew?
people might, yes?
Let me ask you to just hold your breath. Let me come back to Ronnie here. Ronnie, this reminds me of a time when the airwaves were filled with Nigerian music.
Yes.
It was Nigeria had become Nigeria.
Fully.
And so to curb that, UCC comes out and says now that for every hour, especially for like TV stations and radio stations that play music, for every hour, they would have to have at least 3 Ugandan songs, or they would have to have up to 50 or 60% of the music that they're playing being local music or local content. And now with this, that may be reversed naturally.
Local music, you see, I'm very sure a lot of television stations are going to run away from the local content. And in one or the other, we expect now government to come in to energize local play or local music. Because if you don't, NTV is going to start playing music from Nigeria or music from London, if you want to, away from the music that is being played here. You're trying to avoid paying the local musicians, because as I speak, even right now, you don't even know how much you're supposed to be paying them. You know, I was hearing the chairman of the broadcasters recently at Mao's event, who said that they are going to pay the local artists, you know, but he wasn't very clear on how much money he's supposed to be paying to play their music. So you'll find that whether you like it or not, stations are going to keep playing music the other end, you know. And if at all you've been playing three songs, the Ugandan songs, and maybe 2 from the international market, you're now going to be forced to increase the international play. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. Could you also speak into another dynamic that I see? This, of course, was largely pushed by musicians and was largely pushed by musicians within central of the country, who are already headlining the waves right now. So what happens if Shiba Karungi is, you know, headlining the stations across, but a Shiba from Acholi with music, her music is not getting even space to be able to benefit from such things?
That's true. The Shiba, the other side in Gulu, for example, the most popular artist in the other side, if they don't do too much to promote their music, they're not going to be equal to the Shiba in Kampala. Trust me, Shiba in Kampala will do quite a number of concerts here, and they will benefit in one way or the other with promotion. Then the other side with the other lady who is playing, but no one is giving them a lot of attention. You know, they're not promoting themselves so much. So I think the bill calls for quite a lot of things that have to be attached. One of them is promotion of your works. If you are an artist, you need to be able to promote your work so much. And to some extent, I feel like you need to leave these stations, play your work, you know, for starters, till when you make it. Someone in parliament was saying that we're actually giving you, we're doing this for you, you know. To some extent, we all came out to blow the speaker because of saying that she's just helping local musicians by playing their music on Bukedia FM, you know. But to me, some of these things are very exploitative. The time has now come where people now need, the government has to sensitize Ugandans, and definitely they need to also promote the Ugandan play. Okay.
What do you see as emerging trends out of this bill? Should it be ascended to by the president? By emerging trends, it's in reference to what we've just talked about, that in case it holds water, stations or middlemen will be forced to pay foreign music, to play foreign music or foreign content. It's a trend that we saw back in the 90s because a similar law was in existence. And so that's why our airwaves in the 90s had a lot of Western music. All the programming was based on Western music. And to the extent that artists at the time would have to get out of their pocket, they pay show hosts in order to create or have their music in cycle. Which was also a trend out of response to something that was curtailing the industry. So what do you project would be the emerging trends that may not really favor what is intended for good?
In my own opinion, it's upon this artist that is producing music, that is putting out their music, to come out and be able to understand the structures, to understand music fully, to understand the value attached to music, the value proposition of being an artist. If they do not come out to understand the business aspect of intellectual property, they will not earn.
Okay, but when you say understanding, Ronnie, you've interacted with artists, and not even just in the music industry, but in the creative industry, in the fashion industry, they lack knowledge.
Yes.
And you know what the Bible says about knowledge. So if people are already lacking knowledge, even if government tries to sensitize them about something they themselves are not aware of, because again, this is largely an informal pool of art. And so they're not aware about it, they're not getting trained about it. I mean, even the ones who are tabling this bill were not really having
They didn't know.
They didn't
Even
know.
the lawmakers themselves.
Exactly.
But now, to me, right now, I feel associations now like us, the Pearl of Africa Fashion Alliance, associations that like the National, the Culture Forum, for example, the time has now come to start putting up workshops, you know, for capacity building. These artists have to understand what they're handling. Not until they do that, the government is not going to come out to do this for them. They're not. So it's upon us back here in private sector to start doing this for ourselves, because I'm very certain the government does not have that kind of money to keep doing that. That's why we're now going to start tapping into the money that is being taken to the circles and all that stuff, to start sensitizing Ugandans upon all these things of intellectual property. Right now I'm putting up a book regarding intellectual property in fashion, you know, just to make it easy for our Ugandan designers to fully understand that this concerns you before you start running to government. For sure, government is not going to be that helpful, and unless otherwise, but now it all goes back to our associations for advocacy now. We need to advocate for better education about all these things. Talking about better education, we as the Pearl of Africa Fashion Alliance, we are even telling government now that we need to change the curriculum, add in quite a number of things. I know right now we're into a better curriculum, but there is a lot that has to be changed with the settings, with the people that are teaching our Ugandans. So the time has now come. By the time we start benefiting from intellectual property, I believe everyone now will know what they are dealing with. But at the moment, now that every Ugandan is excited, let's not expect too much.
Another element that I see out of all of this is that the stakeholders are working in silos. You yourself mentioned that you had to have an engagement meeting to see that the fashion is really catered for in this bill while it was being put together, which audience you did get. So just to help me understand that, did you have to do that as Ronnie representing the fashion people? Did you have to make those moves for yourself because of how passionate you are about the fashion industry, while the musicians also made their own case?
No, I didn't do it personally. I represent people, and I cannot be personal when I'm doing some of these things. We put up a position paper and went to Parliament, and were part of the legal, you know, the people that were invited. But we found it very hard because everyone that was facing us from Parliament, most of them understand music. They do not understand
when they hear the word art. Yeah.
When you talk about art today in Uganda, the very first thing runs to people who are into music, to those that are into today, to people who are into the filmmakers. So fashion designers are most times not even, you know, talked about. Yet they wear fashion every day, you see? So it's very funny. But all the same, we tried our best to see that they understand us. We're trying to see that the Parliament of Uganda, with their legal committee, understands the value of the fashion industry and its contribution to our GDP. It was very important for them to understand that when you're bringing out this kind of bill, please include us. Don't just think of music alone. That was our small fight. But even at the end of the day, we realize whenever there are such kind of conferences, whenever there's such kind of negotiations or any kind of sit-downs, we are always left aside. So personally, that's why we came out and said, no, this has to end. And I'm happy for the National Culture Forum and UNCC to coming out to giving us a domain of our own, away from the visual artists. Because sincerely, all around the world, fashion and design is a very big contributor to our GDP. And it has been left aside. So in Uganda, from way back, music has been everywhere. Music, music, music. Everyone talks about music. But they do not see that other element where clothing is a big deal.
And it's a big deal because Vanakampala now are wearing designer gowns from from local designers, which is very impressive, and they must benefit from
right now
that.
We are advocating for things like the back cloth to get a geographical indication. There are things we are trying to see that we really build our fashion identity in Uganda.
So on the side of fashion identity, the creative sector for fashion, is it structured enough to even milk from this law?
We are structuring it. I will tell you, we've been calling it an industry for long, but I think it wasn't an industry without structures. You know, without proper structures, there is no industry. That's what we're telling artists, designers, photographers, makeup artists, etc. We're telling them, come together, let's unite and understand the power behind the unity. We believe we're going to make Uganda shine out there, even locally, if only people get together and fully understand these kind of structures.
The law is also emphasizing registration of creative works,
right,
which definitely comes into fashion. How practical is this registration for the fashion designers who create their collections frequently? Fashion
designers today are registering their patterns, their sketchworks, before they put them out there. I'm talking about those that are serious, for heaven's sake. The serious ones that understand the business behind fashion are running out to work on their trademarks before they put out their work. And those that are not serious are all over the world. They're all over the space making a lot of noise. And I want to say I'm disappointed because that's the biggest number of Ugandans that are doing so. You know, we run so much before we register our works. People are infringing on it. People are copying it. There is too much of copy and paste. People are running, you as a client might run to Pinterest and want to use the exact designs very fast for a designer to work on it. But at the end of the day, the designer is the one in charge of that copyright. You know, you'll go to a photo studio to take pictures, you'll pay, yes, but the photographer owns the copyright. So we want that photographer to be able to register a trademark, to register for copyright of their works. Something that has not been in existence.
Here I was thinking I need to go to the studio for a photo shoot. Yes. Now I have to pay for the job done, and then I have photographer will need to eat on my
give you image rights.
Yeah.
You know? And I will tell you, Ugandans, if you ever go to a photo studio and take pictures, more so if you're going to use these pictures commercially at any one time, please make sure you have a legal understanding with that photographer. You need to make sure that they sign somewhere that they're transferring the rights to you. Or else, trust me, the photographer owns your...
As an art, there's the unspoken cost to legalize yourself, because you're not going to just wake up and think now things are going to get to you. You have to pay a copyright, you have to get a trademark and all those things. Talk to us about those hidden costs that are coming with this development.
You see, anyone can start a business, but getting involved with intellectual property, you will find that some of these elements are expensive for some of these artists. Government, please lower down the costs. I'm so happy that at least they have been able to lower down the costs of copyright. Someone can, around 50,000, someone can register a design, things like that. But how many designers, for example, you'll find a designer like Joan Jed having more than 40 designs. Is she going to register all of them? And of course the answer will be yes, if at all she's serious in business. So it becomes extremely very expensive for a lot of artists now to go the right way, the right path, registering a business of its own. As I speak, too many taxes we are paying. Before you know it, your SB is also there. You have to pay Smanya, the post thing. There is too much to pay as compared to how much we are earning from the sector, you see. But all the same, the value of intellectual property now comes in, whereby if at all I've been taking your pictures at 100,000, 200,000, I'm going to now get to 500,000. If you don't want, please go to another photographer. Why? Because I'm also looking at the cost I have to pay for the IP.
AI is here. We shall,
now, AI is also
take
coming,
our own photos
AI,
with our phones, and AI will get us the studio version. I don't know if Andrew is still with us. My producer, is Andrew still with me? Okay, as they
Yes,
find.
I'm still.
Okay, all right. Andrew, can you speak to us about the ripple effects towards this bill if it's actually signed by the president? What are the expected outcomes and expected impact, both positive and negative, and to all the various stakeholders, including the middleman?
I think one of the positives is that very organized artists are going to get paid. I can bet very many of the artists that were singing outside the parliament after the bill had been signed and had been passed are not registered to any collecting society. They are not registered to UPRS, and they are not registered to any collecting society that's known. So they might have celebrated, but they cannot get paid. Like, this law cannot work for you if you cannot prove you do not own the work. So if you're not registered as a creative for any collecting society, be it a writers society, because there is a society that collects for writers, and there is a society that collects for filmmakers. And for artists, there is UPRS, but even some artists are not registered in Uganda, but they are registered in other countries, so they can be collected for in Uganda on behalf of the societies that are collecting for them. And then we have very many artists that are not registered to any society, but they were celebrating. Those are not going to benefit from it at all. Whether they have very big songs, whether they are doing what, they are not going to benefit from their songs being hits and being played across the country. So for me, one of the benefits is that it's going to force artists to professionalize. But while they professionalize, this is something that they missed. Most artists do not want to pay their songwriters. That songwriters are part of the people that must be paid those royalties. Backup vocalists, people that play instruments when you're creating a song, every single person that contributes to a song should be paid, and they should be listed down among the people that should be paid when royalties are paid. Most of the times when I check artists' music, including the president of the federation, they usually list themselves as producers, as composers, as songwriters, and performers. Like, naturally, that cannot happen when you're doing a song. You need, it's always a teamwork. So right now, they need to look into themselves. If they are fighting for themselves, what about the other creatives they do work with?
I'm going to give the closing remarks to Ronnie Nsubuga here, and to let us know, yes, it's here and it's possibly here to stay. How does the industry collectively move forward and position itself to benefit?
The industry to benefit today, let's try our best to make sure that we are professional. Our work is registered. We respect the copyright law, because no matter what, it will be there. It has to exist whether we like it or not. Let's formalize our businesses. Let's try to work with, let's unite up and work with all these societies. Work with the Pearl of Africa Fashion Alliance. And at the end of the day, I will expect that you will earn, you will control what you have, and you will make much money.
Okay.
Yes.
And the beauty in all of this is that if you're fully registered and legally positioned for this, even if it's one thing, it can make you a lot more money than these things of wanting to produce another song and another song, when one song like this can make you sit back and put your legs up in Dubai. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this conversation. Uganda's new Copyright and Neighboring Rights Amendment Bill could be the mark for a turning point for the creative industry. So from fashion to comedy to film and music, the success of this law is entirely going to be dependent on enforcement, but also more specifically on awareness, capacity, as well as collaboration. Thank you so much, Ronnie Nsubuga. Thank you so